What if a single quiet practice could let you see the dark places inside your own mind? Imagine lifting a thin veil with the gentlest of touches. No spectacle, no theater. Only a small, simple somatic check that wakes a recognition inside you. Framed here as a Tibetan-monk technique for modern seekers. An interpretation that highlights the body-centered clarity shared across contemplative lineages. If you are willing to move slowly, to listen with your skin and breath, you may find that a deeper orientation toward yourself has been waiting all along. There are records, fragments kept outside the canonical histories, that speak of an embodied way to verify who you are. The manuscripts found at Nag Hammadi in 1945 contain texts, such as the Gospel of Philip, that describe practices meant not for argument but for lived recognition. Scholars note these texts as suggestive rather than definitive, and the histories show how such teachings were marginalized in favor of other paths. I mention this not to prove the practice by pedigree, but to say, there is a lineage of people who sought an inner confirmation, a way to test the truth inside the body itself. That background matters, but the matter at hand is your experience. To make sense of what happens when we try to see inwardly, let me offer a simple map. At the center of this map is the monad, the primordial source, the seed of awareness from which your being springs. Think of it as the original light, an interior origin that remembers itself. Surrounding that inner light is a world of construction, what some texts call the demiurge, the architect of material reality who shapes perception into forms and rules. Between the monad's subtle luminosity and the constructed shell of perception stand archons, not villains in a storybook sense, but patterns, rhythms, and habits, frequency-like forces that scatter attention and dull immediate recognition. They are the reflexes of the system that keep you looking outward for authority instead of inward for knowing. When you sit with that map, the practice that follows becomes less fanciful. We are not fighting demons. We are simply noticing where attention has been trained to look and gently reorienting it. The technique I will guide you through is body-centered and straightforward. Breath to settle, 3 gentle somatic checks to attend, a short first-person declaration to anchor recognition. Each part is optional and non-diagnostic. Treat it as an experiment in attention, not a medical test. If you have health concerns, please consult a professional before doing anything that involves sustained pressure or unusual movement. Begin by finding a comfortable seat. You can sit on a cushion, a chair, or lie down if needed, as long as your neck and spine feel supported. Allow your hands to rest lightly in your lap or on your thighs. Let your shoulders soften. There is no need for perfect posture, only enough steadiness that you can be present with what is subtle. Start with the breath. Take a long, gentle inhale through the nose. Let the breath expand the belly first, then the lower ribs. Pause for the smallest beat at the top. Not a strain, a tilt of attention. And exhale with a soft, complete release, letting the belly fall and the ribs settle. Do that pattern twice. The purpose of these breaths is not to alter your physiology dramatically, but to give the nervous system a momentary permission to slow down, so that finer sensations can be perceived. Now bring your attention to the first place, the base of the skull. Using the pads of your fingers, 2 or 3 fingertips, rest them lightly at the very top of the neck where it meets the skull, where the hairline begins or where the skull curves beneath the hair. There is no searching, only a soft contact and quiet attention. Gently feel for any subtle change in texture, temperature, or tension. Notice whether the space responds with a small relaxation, a tiny warmth, a slight pressure, or perhaps nothing at all. If you feel nothing, that is a perfectly valid response. Simply note the absence. As you attend there, keep the breath steady and neutral. If a thought arises, "This is too weird, this is nothing, I feel ridiculous," name it simply as thought. Do not argue with it. Let it be like a cloud passing across a window, Return the focus to the tactile sense at the base of the skull. The invitation is to discover whether the body holds a subtle signal of recognition, a gentle nod that something inside remembers. When you have given this area a few quiet moments, move your fingers without force to the second point, the outer side of the hand, between the little finger and the wrist. Place your hand palm down, or let the other hand cradle the back of it. With your fingertips, trace the small zone where the hand meets the wrist at the edge, the lateral line of the hand. You might feel a slight ridge, a softness, a coolness, or a mild responsiveness when you press just so. Again, keep your touch light. Imagine you are checking if a sleeping bird will stir from a branch. Gentle, respectful, unobtrusive. Attend to any sensation, a pulsing, a small flicker, a sense of being held, or simply the fact of contact alone. Allow any impulse to judge to pass away. If distraction arises, someone will see me doing this, I must be wasting time. Notice it without blame and return to touch. These micro-contacts train attention to the edges of your present body, where inner recognition often speaks in whispers. Finally, bring your hand to the third point, the sternum, a small inch or two above the center of the breastbone. This is not the heart itself but the point just above it, a place many contemplatives name as the chest's center. Using the pads of your fingers, press very gently. No pressure that causes pain, just enough to sense a response. Some people report warmth, a soft opening, a quickening of breath, or a sense of calm. Others feel no obvious change. Keep a soft, curious attitude. Let whatever appears be the data. After each check, linger for a moment and notice any shift in your field of awareness. Is the world quieter? Is there a sharpened inner listening? Is a stored image or memory surfacing? These responses are phenomenological, descriptions of experience, not promises or guarantees. They are the body's way of reporting. The ancient texts that inspired this technique treated such reports as evidence that the inner spark, the source, could be reconfirmed directly by the one who experiences it. At the close of the 3 checks, take one more slow breath and say the short statement aloud, or whisper it to yourself. Speak it in the present tense, owning it as your immediate orientation. Let the cadence be simple. I remember the source. I see through the veil. Say it once, softly. Then, if you wish, repeat it twice more with deliberate attention to how it settles in your chest and the back of your skull. Notice whether the words land differently the second or third time. Not trying to force anything, but listening to what shifts when you claim the phrase. This declaration is not a spell. It is an anchor for attention, a way to bring the cognitive mind and the sensing body into a single alignment. If the phrase feels awkward, shorten it to a single word that resonates for you, such as remember or recognition. The exact wording matters less than the first-person present tense posture. You naming what is, right now. If you noticed anything at all, a warmth, a pressure, a sudden mental stillness, type one word in the comments. Recognition. If nothing happened, that is fine too. Leave silence as your response or write still. Your experience is not a test of worthiness, only a field report. Did the body deliver any signal? That one-word reply helps us know we are witnessing together. Expect resistance. It will show up as cheap distractions, sarcastic thoughts, or a pounding list of errands, the mind's reflex to reassert familiarity. The ancient schools had a name for these reflexes, archons in the Gnostic vocabulary, patterns and frequencies that keep attention fragmented. Today we might call them habitual thought forms, anxiety loops, the little inner commentator. When they arise, do not engage them. Notice them as if you were observing weather on a distant plain. There is doubt. There is judgment. Then guide your attention back to the breath or the place you last touched. The practice is simple because the resistance is old. It expects you to obey it. The skill is to recognize that expectation and to return, again and again, without drama. You may feel tempted to look for dramatic signs, a ringing in the ears, a flood of images, a visionary rush. Many seekers have expectations shaped by stories. Let those expectations go. Most often, recognition arrives as small shifts, a clarity in perception, a softening around the edges of anxiety, a momentary sense that you are not only the person your thoughts describe. That moment is profound precisely because it is quiet. It is like discovering a room you always walked past. Everything else is the same, but suddenly you know another way to be. Different bodies will report different things. Some people feel a subtle electric warmth at the base of the skull. Others feel a relaxation in the jaw. Some notice a tiny elevation in the hand. Others sense an opening at the chest. These are not universal markers to be measured with instruments. They are experiential signs, useful to you and not necessarily to anyone else. Take them as invitations, not concluding proof. Keep a curious journal if you wish. Note what appeared, when it did, and how long it lasted. Over time, patterns may emerge. When doubt floods in, this is nonsense. I want immediate proof. Remember that the goal here is anamnesis, memory or recognition waking inside you. Anamnesis is not a one-off. It is a reorientation that grows with careful tending. Like a seed that requires repeated watering, the recognition deepens through repetition and companionship. That is why communities matter. Sharing a single-word report, reading collective testimonies, or simply knowing others are practicing similar checks can help normalize subtle experiences and prevent solitary confusion. There is also a moral texture to this practice. It is tempting to use inner experiences as badges of superiority. Avoid that temptation. The work is not to prove anything to anyone, nor to manufacture spiritual status. It is a humble reopening of your capacity to be present to yourself. Respect what arises in others. Do not demand another's confirmation as validation of your experience. The old texts that spoke of these practices emphasized personal verification, what you yourself can confirm, precisely to free the seeker from dependency on external authorities. That freedom is an ethical stance. The inner witness guides, and the outer community supports. If you find a steady softening in yourself over repeated practices, a less reactive stance, a warmer patience, consider engaging with others who practice in a gentle, accountable way. Look for groups that prioritize safety, welcome variation in responses, and refuse sensationalism. Shared witnessing can deepen integration. Someone else's description of a small chest opening might help you name your own subtle shift. But always keep your primary allegiance to your own felt sense. The body is the immediate evidence. A few practical cautions before we close. This is an experiential practice, not a medical evaluation. If you experience pain, dizziness, or any alarming physical symptom while making these checks, stop and consult a healthcare professional. If strong emotional material surfaces, grief, panic, intense dissociation, consider seeking support from a trained therapist or a trusted guide who can hold you through integration. The aim here is gentle curiosity, not overstimulation. In the coming days, if you choose to continue, return to the 3 checks for short periods rather than long marathon sessions. 2 or 3 repetitions in a sitting can be more revealing than one long attempt. Keep a neutral journal entry. Date, brief note of sensations, and a word that names the tone. Softening, stillness, nothing, surprise. Over time, you will start to see patterns that are meaningful to you. Some seekers ask whether this practice changes the world. The answer is subtle. As you become clearer, your outer behavior often changes because your choices come from a more grounded awareness. That is not a magical guarantee, but a common unfolding. Small inner vistas can reshape how you respond to stress, how you speak to others, how you carry your presence. The practice is not about escape from the world, but about inhabiting it more fully. We have framed this method in the language of a Tibetan-style somatic practice because that frame highlights the attentive, body-centered clarity shared across many contemplative lineages. At the same time, it resonates with descriptions found in the Nag Hammadi texts, which suggest a three-point somatic map for inner verification. To repeat, framed here as a Tibetan monk technique for modern seekers, an interpretation that highlights the body-centered clarity shared across contemplative lineages. That sentence is important because it names how we hold both traditions, as analogy, as parallel, not as historical equivalents. Before we finish, return for a closing moment to your breath. Take 3 gentle inhalations and exhalations, slow enough to feel them, but not so long that you strain. Rest your attention where you felt the most response during the checks. If nothing felt different, rest in the sense of openness that the practice created simply by paying attention. Offer yourself a moment of gratitude for having tried. As you go about your day, treat any arising sensations with curiosity rather than expectation. If curiosity becomes habitual, you will find that life offers more clarity simply because you have trained yourself to notice. If you found anything at all in this short experiment, an easing at the skull, a warmth at the chest, a tiny flutter in the hand, please type one word in the comments now. Recognition. That single shared word helps remind us we do not practice alone. If you want to continue, I will be sharing further activations that explore this embodied seeing with gentle progressions, community reflections, and safe integration practices. Subscribe and save this video so you can return to the exercises when it suits you. Remember that this is an explorative path. Practice gently, avoid extremes, and consult professional help for any health concerns. Close now with a small personal phrase if you like, quietly to yourself. I remember the source. I see through the veil. Let that sit for a breath. Rest for a few moments and then move into the rest of your day with softened attention. The body remembers more than the mind often believes. With patient repetition, that memory can become a living habit of presence.